to waive the 3-day
No, I'm not going to waive the 3-day rule.
Breaking news coming out overnight as Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy has announced that the 3-day rule will stand for the debt ceiling talks, which basically means, in a nutshell, we've got less time than we anticipated, and this could impact everybody. Now, I shared this with you live, and I've got video footage I'm going to share with you in just a second so you can hear it for yourself. But take a look at the headlines that are now starting to roll out this morning. McCarthy's endgame on the debt ceiling begins to come into focus. McCarthy calls Biden's meetings productive and professional, but no debt ceiling deal as of yet. And we're hearing that the productivity was the fact that the two were willing to meet together and vocalize their stances. But there is no meeting in the middle as of right now. We are still very far apart, we're hearing. And like I said, we've only had until June 1st, we're hearing. But it's actually going to be less than that. You're going to see in just a second. Biden-McCarthy meeting ends with no deal on the debt ceiling. Debt ceiling talks grind on as both sides are far apart. And like I said, the 3-day rule has been announced that it will stand in place. Take a look at this from Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy's page. Availability of measures considered under suspension of the rules. Purpose. This protocol is designed to ensure that the requirement that bills be publicly available for 3 days prior to the consideration applies to bills considered under the suspension of the rules. In other words, AKA, he is saying, if you try to pass something at the last second and push it through without giving us the ability to review it, you're wrong. He said maybe former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi used to do that. I will have the 3-day rule implemented, which means if you pass it at the 11th hour on June 1st, we will still have 3 days, regardless of if we default, to review this bill. We are not passing something irresponsibly and shoving it through at the last minute. He said, we need time to review every piece of this legislation. And when they're asked, will you allow this to default? You're going to see this here in just a second. He says, it's not me. It's Biden. He said, I requested back in January and February for us to discuss this, to reel in the spending because it's out of control. We're hitting new record highs of spending. We're going above and beyond what we can handle. Inflation is out of control. And he said he refused to speak to me for 97 days. And now he's finally coming to the table. And he said, we shouldn't even be here. And he said, but the 3-day rule will stand because whatever we pass, I want to make sure that Congress has the appropriate amount of time to review it. And you're going to see, I'm going to share with you the video footage, exactly what he said coming out of that meeting. And yeah, today's the 23rd. We have until June 1st. And I just shared with you that Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said that she thinks that it is very unlikely that we will make it till June 15th, that we will default, that it is very likely that we will default sometime before June 15th. And that will be catastrophic for our economy. Now, we will see if they're able to pull something off here very soon. But you guys, I will keep you up to date. Now, in addition to that, I've already let you know how this is going to be impacting Social Security, veterans benefits, SSI, SSDI, and also just the entire world, not just our nation, but our world, as the good standing, the credit of America will be jeopardized. But you guys, stick around to the end. I'm going to give you an update on that. But let's go ahead and take a look at this video footage so you can see it for yourself directly from Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy and what he had to say. Now, before we do me a quick favor. Smash the like button if you appreciate the updates so that way you can stay up to speed on everything. Hit the subscribe button. I will keep you notified of everything taking place. And with that being said, though, let's go ahead and take a look at this clip. It's roughly about 10-15 minutes long, and at the end, I'll give you that information on how it will impact those fixed income benefits, Social Security, etc. Let's go ahead and take a look.
Productive, but are you confident that you can get a deal with enough time left to prevent Americans from feeling the economic pain here?
Look, the thing I want to tell America, I never wanted to be here. I do not like the idea that you govern by chaos, you govern by a deadline. So all the way back in January, I requested meetings with the president after I won Speaker, only on this issue. We always knew this issue was coming. February 1st, I got that meeting, and I sat with the president. I told him, Mr. President, we should work together to find where we could have common ground to raise the debt ceiling, but curve our spending so we stop doing this. And I told the president, there's only two things. Not going to raise taxes, and we're not going to pass a clean debt ceiling. But for 97 days, he said he wouldn't meet with me. And now, what the Republicans went and did in the House, we passed a bill that raised the debt ceiling, saved us money, put us on a trajectory where we could go to balance. This was long before Secretary Yellen told us the deadline was June 1st, because we don't want to govern that way. Unfortunately, denying our ability to meet put us in this situation. I believe we can still get there.
With 9 days, you can do it.
I believe we can get it done. Look,
Mr. Statement,
I've watched us work before. I think from this discussion, he knows where we are. We had greater explanation of. He had to be at G7 while our staffs were meeting. We were able to explain where some positions they have. I think that was a better explanation for both sides.
Mr. Speaker, how long should these spending caps last, and would they include defense spending?
Well, when you look at spending caps and think about what we pass in Limit, Save, Grow, we don't say each year we have government growing by 1%. That was an idea by Joe Manchin. And so what we look at, when you get elected to Congress, we decide, just like in a household, if you make $100 a week, you decide your priorities where you spend that money. That's what we would do once we get the spending caps or the top line dollar figure of how much we'll spend. Now, since the Democrats went into power, they've increased almost $6 trillion. That brought us inflation, brought us these challenges, but so the president's budget wants to spend more money than we spent at the height of COVID. We shouldn't do that. So it is easy for us to spend it less than we spent last year or this year, but only in Washington is that's difficult, and that's our challenge.
Mr. Speaker, 3-day rule, given that this has to pass the House, has to pass the Senate, we're 9 days out. Is that something that you're looking at?
Looking to do something?
To waive the 3-day
No, I'm not going to waive the 3-day rule because we have the 3-day rule for a reason. You lend your voice to your elected officials. You want to make sure they have their voice. If you want to move a bill such as this, and I know in past Congresses under Speaker Pelosi it was different, they would move trillions of dollars in a day and nobody could read the bill. I'm not going to be afraid of what the agreement comes in the end. Because I would sit that bill down and I would give everybody 72 hours so everybody knows what they're voting on. The American public, yes.
Is there a drop-dead date where you need to have a deal in order to get it through the House?
Look, I've always felt, looking back before, we should already be here. And as I told you, I've never wanted to be here. All of my actions from the day I became Speaker was to try to make sure we weren't here. Unfortunately, we went 97 days where people said they wouldn't talk to us. We went more than 100 days, said you couldn't negotiate on this. We're finally at that point. Had we started this in February, we could have been done long before the deadline.
What's the real target to have
Where
the
did you
bill?
leave it? Are you meeting tomorrow? Or what are you doing?
Well, we instructed Chairman McHenry and others and in the White House to come back together based upon our discussions in the room and try to find where we can get to common ground there.
Speaker,
Yes.
the president was just like 90 minutes ago. He was talking about loopholes and people who make up to $400,000 a year. You're telling me that new revenue is totally off the table?
Were you here earlier? So I don't want to repeat myself, but in the 50 years of how much money government has brought in, we normally bring in 17% of GDP. So we're bringing in almost 20%. Only 2 times in the modern history of this country, 1944 and 2000, have we ever brought in this higher percent. And it's more money than ever before. So if I ran my household where I brought in more money than ever before, but I owe more money than I make in my entire year, I don't think it's a revenue problem. It's a spending problem. It's the same thing with government, because for 50 years in government, we normally only spend 21% of GDP. But when the Democrats took over, they raised that up to more than 24%. We've never spent this high, and it's going to 25. So if you don't tackle the problems that have created, you're never going to solve it. So the answer to your question again that asked earlier is no. We're not looking at revenues, and if you think to put some type of taxes would only hurt our economy for one. Secondly, we're already in a challenge where they raise so much inflation based upon their spending. That would be a stupid thing to do, and you really need to tackle the real problem. Look, I've always tried to explain. To me, a debt ceiling is providing your child a credit card. They hit the limit, and year after year, all you did was raise the limit. You did nothing about their spending. And all of a sudden, you owe more on the credit card than you make the entire year. Because our debt, we owe more than the size of our economy by 20%. So should you just raise the debt limit again? Is it so arcane to say, should we look at where we're spending if we're spending higher than we average do in 50 years? Should it be arcane that we pull money back that we appropriated during COVID but wasn't spent? Is it odd to show that in our history, when we have work requirements, we help more people get jobs, and that helps Social Security and Medicare because more people are paying in? Is it odd that we say we should be energy independent, so you lower the price of energy, which helps lower inflation, that makes us less dependent on China? I don't think we're in a weird place here. It's odd that only in Washington you have to fight so hard to make this a reality, and that's what we're talking about.
Mr. Speaker, can you say with confidence that you trust President Biden and the Democrats that they want to make a deal?
I think they want to make a deal, but what we've watched time and again and why we're in this problem, every deal they want to make in the past only meant they wanted to make a deal about spending more money. At the time of just spending more money in America in government is wrong. And you as taxpayers should say the same thing. You as taxpayers, it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. It's coming out of your pocket. Every new child that was born today just got a $94,000 bill, and they're 1 day old. I think that's wrong. I think we're failing in that problem. And you know what? You can blame both sides for this, but that has got to stop, and it's got to end now. And this is I don't want you to think at the end of the day, the bill that we come up with is going to solve all this problem, but it's going to be a step to finally acknowledge our problem and put one step in the right direction. And we're going to come back the next day and get the next step.
Mr. Speaker, is there any areas, if any, did you guys find agreement on today?
Look, I think we both agree we want to be able to come to an agreement. We both agree on the areas that we know there's disagreement on, but I think it was productive in the professionalism, the honesty with one another, and the desire to try to find common ground.
Mr. Speaker, where did you leave work requirements? Are they still on the table?
Look, there's nothing agreed to. Everything's being talked about.
Wow, so there you have it, you guys. That was yesterday evening. Now let me know your thoughts. Do you think that they're going to resolve this? Are we going to default? We are very close. Are they going to pull off some last-minute trick to get this done? Is President Joe Biden going to be using the 14th Amendment? We have been hearing people say that he should just invoke the 14th Amendment, bypass Congress, but a lot of people are saying that is simply not going to be enough. It's going to require an act of Congress to get this done and for us to avoid a default. Now, we will see. I will keep you guys up to date every step of the way as the information rolls out. And no, we heard Kevin McCarthy say they're likely going to be discussing this every single day because they understand the severity of what's at stake. Now, in addition to that, as I mentioned, if we do default, I've let you know the calendar schedule for Social Security and other fixed income benefits. If you're interested, check out this video right here as I cover it in detail for you next. You can click this video or go check it out on the channel. But with that being said, you guys, thank you so much for joining me. I will keep you up to date as information rolls out. Take care. God bless. This is Steve.